Who are you flying to Europe with? His name is Nathan. What are you doing here?
You called me paranoid. Don't touch me.
Gaslighting is a slow, silent poison. It doesn't kill you all at once. It just makes you doubt your own sanity until you have nothing left to trust. Nathan called me clinically paranoid on Tuesday. By Thursday, his beautiful, unsuspecting mistress was offering me a breath mint on Flight 892. Trust is a fragile architecture, built over years but capable of collapsing in a single, devastating afternoon. For 8 years, Nathan Crawford and I had what looked like the perfect Seattle marriage. He was a senior VP at a logistics firm. I ran a boutique architectural consulting agency. We had the remodeled craftsman home in Queen Anne, the golden retriever, the dinner parties with couples who drank expensive Pinot and complained about property taxes. To the outside world, we were impenetrable. But inside the walls of our home, the foundation had been rotting for 6 months. It started with the subtle things. The sudden change in his phone passcode from our anniversary date to a random string of numbers. The way he began taking his phone into the master bathroom, leaving the shower running for 20 minutes while I heard the muffled tapping of his thumbs against the glass screen. When I asked him about it, the pivot was always seamless. He was dealing with a massive merger, he said, a hostile takeover of a European shipping company that required constant, around-the-clock communication with the London office. Then came the physical distance. The man who used to wrap his arms around my waist while I made morning coffee suddenly recoiled if I bumped into him in the hallway. He blamed stress, he blamed insomnia, and eventually, he started blaming me. The breaking point arrived on a rainy Tuesday evening. Nathan was packing for a 10-day business trip to London. His Rimowa suitcase lay open on our king-sized bed, precisely organized. I was sitting on the edge of the mattress, watching him fold a crisp white Charvet shirt. I hadn't planned on starting a fight, but the air in the room was thick with unspoken accusations. Earlier that day, while dropping off his dry cleaning, I had found a receipt crumpled in the pocket of his Burberry trench coat. It was from a high-end jeweler downtown, a charge for $4,500. The item description simply read, 18K, rose gold pendant, custom engraving. Our anniversary wasn't for another 7 months. My birthday had passed in April. Nathan, I said softly, my voice barely carrying over the sound of the rain lashing against the bedroom windows. Who is the necklace for? He froze. His hands, hovering over the perfectly folded shirts, went perfectly still. He slowly turned his head to look at me, and the expression on his face wasn't guilt. It was sheer, icy irritation. What necklace, Olisha? He asked, his tone dropping an octave. I pulled the crumpled receipt from my cardigan pocket and placed it gently on the nightstand. The one you bought on Friday afternoon. When you told me you were stuck in a marathon board meeting. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the room. I watched his eyes dart from the paper back to my face, his corporate brain rapidly calculating the best defensive strategy. He took a deep breath, pinched the bridge of his nose, and let out a long, theatrical sigh. I cannot believe you, Olisha, he muttered, shaking his head. He walked over, picked up the receipt, and tossed it into the wastebasket. It's a retirement gift for Margaret in accounting. The entire executive team chipped in. I just put it on my personal card for the points and I'm expensing it to the firm tomorrow. It was a plausible lie. Almost too plausible. But Margaret in accounting was 65 and wore chunky turquoise jewelry she bought in New Mexico, not delicate rose gold. A custom-engraved pendant for Margaret? I asked, my voice trembling. Since when do you care about Margaret's retirement? Since she saved my department from an IRS audit 3 years ago, Nathan suddenly shouted, his voice echoing off the hardwood floors. He stormed over to my side of the bed, towering over me. Do you hear yourself? Do you realize how insane you sound right now? You are digging through my pockets like some kind of deranged private investigator. I was taking your coat to the dry cleaners, Nathan. I wasn't digging. You are suffocating me, Olisha, he spat, his eyes dark and furious. For the last 6 months, you have questioned every late night, every text message, every damn breath I take. You are clinically paranoid. You need help. You are destroying this marriage with your delusions, and I am not going to stand here and be interrogated in my own home before a transatlantic flight. He turned his back to me, zipping up his suitcase with violent, jerky movements. The gaslighting was so intense, so perfectly executed, that the room literally spun. For a fleeting second, I wondered if he was right. Was I crazy? Was I projecting my own insecurities onto an innocent man working himself to the bone? He left for the airport the next morning without kissing me goodbye. He just stood by the front door, his expensive wool coat draped over his arm, and gave me a look of profound disappointment. Use these 10 days to think about whether you actually want to be in this marriage, he said coldly. Then, he walked out and got into his waiting town car. I stood in the foyer for an hour, paralyzed by a sickening blend of guilt and terror. But then, clarity hit me like a physical blow. The instinct of a woman who has been lied to is a primal, undeniable force. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was being played. I walked upstairs, opened my laptop, and pulled up his itinerary, which he had forwarded to my email weeks ago for emergency contact purposes. British Airways Flight 112, departing SeaTac at 6:30 p.m., arriving at London Heathrow. Without hesitating, I navigated to the airline's website. I didn't care about the cost. I didn't care about the logistics. I just needed the truth. I typed in my credit card information and purchased a premium economy ticket on the exact same flight. If my husband was going to London for a business trip, I was going to watch him do it. And if he wasn't, I was going to burn his world to the ground. SeaTac Airport was a chaotic mess of travelers, rolling suitcases, and garbled intercom announcements when I arrived at 4:00 p.m. Adrenaline pumped through my veins, making my hands shake as I paid the Uber driver. I had dressed meticulously for this espionage. Nathan knew my wardrobe intimately, so I had driven to a vintage store in Capitol Hill hours prior and bought things he had never seen me wear. An oversized camel trench coat, a wide-brimmed black wool hat, and a pair of dark, oversized tortoiseshell sunglasses. I tied my normally loose blonde hair into a severe, slicked-back bun. Looking in the terminal bathroom mirror, I barely recognized the elegant, shadowy stranger staring back at me. Good. If I didn't recognize myself, neither would he. Navigating security was agonizing. Every time a tall man in a dark suit walked past the TSA line, my breath hitched. Nathan was flying first class, which meant he would be ensconced in the British Airways Executive Lounge. I had intentionally booked a premium economy seat close enough to keep an eye on him during boarding, but far enough back that we wouldn't cross paths in the aisles. I found a seat at a crowded terminal bar directly across from the first-class lounge entrance. I ordered a gin and tonic. I had no intention of drinking, and hid behind a copy of the Wall Street Journal. At 5:45 p.m., the lounge doors slid open. Nathan walked out. My heart slammed against my ribs. He looked impossibly handsome, wearing his tailored navy blazer and crisp white shirt, effortlessly pulling his silver Rimowa carry-on. But it wasn't his appearance that made my blood run cold. It was his demeanor. He was supposed to be a stressed executive flying out for a grueling European merger. Instead, he was practically glowing. He was staring down at his phone, typing rapidly, and a wide, boyish smile spread across his face. It was the exact smile he used to give me when we were dating, the smile that meant he was deeply, thrillingly infatuated. He stopped near a concourse pillar, waiting. My grip on the newspaper tightened so hard the paper tore. Who was he waiting for? 10 minutes passed. Nobody approached him. Finally, the gate agent announced the commencement of boarding for first class in Group 1. Nathan slipped his phone into his pocket and joined the priority line. I watched him scan his boarding pass and disappear down the jet bridge. A wave of confusion washed over me. He was alone. Had I actually lost my mind? Was this truly just a business trip? Maybe he was smiling at a funny text from a friend. Maybe Margaret from accounting had sent him a thank you note for the necklace. The guilt began to claw at my throat. What was I doing? I was stalking my own husband across international borders based on a receipt and a gut feeling. The intercom crackled again, calling Group 3. My group. I gathered my things, pulling the brim of my hat down lower, and joined the queue. The walk down the jet bridge felt like a march to the gallows. I kept my head down as I stepped onto the aircraft. I passed through the first-class cabin, my eyes locked on the floor. I didn't dare look up, terrified I would meet Nathan's eyes. I smelled his cologne, Tom Ford Oud Wood, lingering in the aisle as I hurried past row 2, praying he was already engrossed in a movie or reading a prospectus. I finally made it to the premium economy cabin and found my seat, 14B, an aisle seat in the middle section. I collapsed into it, exhaling a shaky breath. I took off my hat and sunglasses, suddenly feeling incredibly foolish. I had spent nearly $3,000 to follow my husband on a perfectly innocent work trip. I was exactly what he called me, clinically paranoid. As I reached up to adjust the overhead vent, a woman rushed down the aisle, slightly breathless, clutching a soft leather tote bag and a glossy passport wallet. "Excuse me, sorry," she said, her voice light and melodic. "I'm in 14A. The window." I stood up to let her in. She was stunning. Early 30s, maybe younger, with cascading dark hair, flawless olive skin, and large, expressive brown eyes. She smelled like expensive jasmine and youth. She was dressed comfortably but impeccably in cashmere sweatpants and a silk camisole under a thick cardigan. "Thank you," she beamed, sliding past me and settling into the window seat. Airport traffic was an absolute nightmare. I thought they were going to close the boarding door on me. "It's always stressful," I offered politely, sitting back down and buckling my seatbelt. I just wanted to close my eyes, endure the 10-hour flight, and figure out how I was going to explain this to Nathan when we landed. Maybe I could just book a return flight immediately, and he would never know I was here. The beautiful woman next to me pulled out her phone, rapidly firing off a text message before switching it to airplane mode. She let out a long, happy sigh and turned to me, her eyes sparkling with electric excitement. "I'm sorry to be so chatty," she said, flashing a brilliant, perfect smile. "I'm just running on pure adrenaline. I'm going to Paris. Well, London first, then Paris. It's my first time in Europe." "That sounds wonderful," I replied, giving her a tight smile. "Vacation?" "Sort of," she giggled, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "It's a romantic getaway. My boyfriend is actually on this flight. He's up in first class." The air in my lungs turned to ice. Every muscle in my body seized. The ambient noise of the cabin, the hum of the engines, the chatter of the passengers, the clicking of overhead bins suddenly faded into a muted, underwater buzz. "Oh," I managed to say. The word felt like sandpaper scraping against my throat. "First class? Why aren't you sitting together?" She rolled her eyes playfully, leaning in conspiratorially, as if we were old friends sharing a secret over cocktails. "He tried. He's so sweet. He booked this trip for us months ago, but his company only pays for one first-class ticket for executives. He tried to upgrade my seat with his miles, but the cabin was completely sold out. He felt terrible about it, but honestly, I don't mind. I have my iPad, some wine, and 10 hours to relax before he spoils me rotten in Mayfair." My hands began to tremble. I slid them under my thighs, pressing down hard to stop the shaking. Countless businessmen fly to London, my rational brain screamed. "It's a coincidence, a terrifying, bizarre coincidence." "That is very generous of him," I whispered, forcing the corners of my mouth to stay upturned. "He's incredible," she said, her eyes softening as she looked toward the front of the plane. "He's an executive at Vanguard Logistics. Very high-stress job. He works way too hard, honestly." The world tilted. The cabin lights seemed to flicker. Vanguard Logistics. Panic is a strange emotion. When it first hits, it's loud and explosive, making your heart race and your skin sweat. But when the panic peaks and realizes there is nowhere to run, it morphs into something terrifyingly calm. A cold, calculating numbness washed over me. I was sitting shoulder to shoulder with the destruction of my life, and she was smiling at me. "Vanguard Logistics?" I repeated, my voice remarkably steady. "I think I've heard of them." "That sounds very impressive." "It is," she said proudly. "He's the VP of Acquisitions. Honestly, he's brilliant, but it takes a toll on him." She paused, reaching down into her soft leather tote bag. "Oh, where are my manners? I'm Sienna Lawson." She extended a perfectly manicured hand. I stared at it for a fraction of a second before taking it. Her skin was soft, warm. "Claire," I lied smoothly, giving her hand a firm squeeze. "Claire Jenkins." "Nice to meet you, Claire," Sienna said. The plane jolted backward as the pushback tug began moving us away from the gate. The safety video started playing on the seatback screens, but Sienna's attention was entirely on me. People on planes love the anonymity of a stranger. They confess sins in the sky that they would never whisper on the ground. "So," I prompted, leaning in slightly, playing the role of the fascinated confidant, "London and Paris. How long have you two been together? About 8 months, Sienna beamed, unzipping her tote bag to pull out a pristine white sleep mask. We met at a charity gala downtown. I'm an interior designer, and I was doing the floral arrangements for the event. He just walked up to me, ordered me a martini, and completely charmed me. It was like something out of a movie. 8 months. My mind violently rewound through the calendar. 8 months ago was November. November was when Nathan forgot my mother's birthday for the first time in a decade. November was when he started working out at a new gym across town, coming home smelling not of sweat, but of expensive soap. 8 months is a great milestone, I said, my fingernails digging into the armrest underneath my crossed arms. But it must be hard with him traveling so much for an executive job. Sienna sighed, her smile faltering for the first time. She looked down at her hands, twisting a delicate silver ring on her right index finger. It is hard, but the traveling isn't the hardest part. She bit her lip, looking at me with a sudden vulnerability that made my stomach churn. Can I be totally honest with you, Claire? I've never told anyone this, but I need to say it out loud. Of course, I murmured, my heart hammering against my ribcage like a trapped bird. I'm a great listener. He's married, Sienna whispered, the word hanging in the pressurized cabin air between us. She looked at me, bracing for judgment. I gave her none. I just widened my eyes slightly, offering a look of sympathetic intrigue. Oh, wow, that is complicated. It's awful, she said, leaning her head back against the headrest as the plane began its long taxi toward the runway. I never, ever thought I would be that woman. I swear to you, Claire, I have morals. But Nathan, he's different. Hearing her say his name, Nathan spoken with such intimate, tender affection, felt like someone sliding a serrated blade between my ribs. How is he different? I asked, my voice barely a whisper over the roar of the engines powering up. Because his marriage has been dead for years, Sienna explained, her tone defensive, regurgitating the lies he had meticulously fed her. He told me all about it on our third date. His wife, she's deeply unstable, clinically paranoid actually. A sharp, hysterical laugh almost clawed its way out of my throat, but I swallowed it down, masking it as a cough. Paranoid? Yes, Sienna nodded gravely. He says she suffocates him. She tracks his location. She goes through his pockets. She accuses him of the craziest things. He says she refuses to get psychiatric help. He's only stayed this long out of pity, really. And because of the assets, of course. Divorces at his level are so messy. But this trip, she smiled again, a triumphant, radiant beam. This trip is the turning point. The plane accelerated down the runway, pressing us back into our seats. The G-force felt like a physical manifestation of the crushing weight on my chest. As the wheels left the tarmac and the nose of the plane pointed toward the dark Seattle sky, I turned to her. What happens on this trip? I asked. Sienna leaned in close, her jasmine perfume overwhelming my senses. He told her he was going on a 10-day business trip to get some space. He told her she needed to use the time to evaluate her mental health. But really, he's taking me to Europe to celebrate. Celebrate what? Sienna's eyes sparkled. She reached into the neckline of her silk camisole and pulled out a delicate, glittering piece of jewelry, a heavy pendant catching the dim cabin lights. On this wit rose gold pendant. He gave it to me at the airport lounge right before we boarded, she whispered, her fingers tracing the smooth metal. He had it custom engraved. Look. She leaned over, holding the pendant out to me. I didn't need to look. I already knew what it was, but I forced my eyes down. Etched elegantly into the back of the rose gold were the words, "To my future, N.C." It's beautiful, I choked out, a single hot tear escaping my left eye and rolling down my cheek. I quickly brushed it away, pretending the dry airplane air was irritating my contacts. So, he's leaving her? As soon as we get back to Seattle, Sienna said confidently, dropping the pendant back against her chest. He already has his lawyer drafting the paperwork. He said he just needed one perfect, stress-free week with me in Paris before he drops the bomb and deals with her inevitable breakdown. I stared straight ahead at the seatback monitor in front of me, watching the little digital airplane inch its way across the map toward the Atlantic. Nathan wasn't just cheating on me. He was orchestrating my psychological destruction. He had intentionally provoked me into a fight, gaslit me into questioning my own sanity, and left me shattered in our hallway, all so he could have a guilt-free European vacation with his 20-something interior designer, using a necklace he claimed was for Margaret in accounting. He thought he was a master manipulator. He thought I was sitting at home in Queen Anne, crying into a glass of wine, wondering if I was the villain in our marriage. He sounds very calculated, I said evenly. Sienna frowned slightly, misinterpreting my tone. No, he's just protective of us. He's actually incredibly sweet. Do you want to see a picture of him? Before I could decline, she unlocked her phone and pulled up her camera roll. She tapped on a photo and angled the screen toward me. There he was, my husband of 8 years, Nathan. He was sitting at the patio table of Le Pichet, our favorite French bistro downtown. He was wearing the gray cashmere sweater I bought him for Christmas, smiling brightly into Sienna's camera. His hand was reaching across the table, his fingers intertwined with hers. I stared at the image of his face, the face I had kissed 1,000 times, the face that had looked at me with cold, dead eyes just 24 hours ago and called me delusional. He is very handsome, I said, my voice eerily calm. The panic was entirely gone now. What replaced it was a cold, pure, unadulterated rage, a diamond-hard resolve that settled deep into my bones. Isn't he? Sienna sighed happily, locking her phone. I'm just so lucky. I know starting a relationship this way is messy, but when you know, you know. Right, Claire? Absolutely. I smiled, turning my head to look her directly in the eyes. I let the silence stretch for a moment, listening to the steady drone of the jet engines. When you know, you know. Sienna settled back into her window seat, pulling her blanket over her legs. I think I'm going to try and sleep for a few hours. Nathan promised he'd sneak back here and check on me when the cabin lights dim. Oh, I said, my smile widening into something sharp and dangerous. I look forward to meeting him. Turbulence rattled the cabin 2 hours over the Atlantic, but it was nothing compared to the storm brewing inside my chest. The overhead lights had been extinguished, plunging the aircraft into a synthetic twilight. Most of the passengers were asleep, lulled into unconsciousness by the rhythmic hum of the Boeing 777's engines and the free alcohol. Sienna was fast asleep beside me, her pristine white eye mask perfectly positioned, breathing in a soft, steady cadence. Her head was tilted slightly toward the window, her silk blanket pulled up to her chin. I did not sleep. I sat perfectly still, my eyes fixed on the narrow aisle leading up to the first-class cabin. The curtain separating our section from the elite tier was drawn shut, a heavy blue velvet barrier. Every time a flight attendant brushed past it, my heart executed a slow, agonizing flip. He was coming. She had said he would. To pass the time, I mentally catalogued the last 8 years. Every late night at the office, every unexplained charge on the credit card, every time he made me feel like a hysterical, broken woman for simply asking a question. The gaslighting had been so methodical, so brilliantly executed, that it felt less like cheating and more like psychological warfare. At exactly 2:15 a.m., the blue velvet curtain parted. A tall figure stepped through, pausing to let a flight attendant pass with a tray of water glasses. It was Nathan. He had changed out of his suit jacket and was now wearing a comfortable, expensive-looking cashmere zip-up. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, glancing at his Rolex before scanning the rows of premium economy. He was looking for row 14. I slowly reached up and pushed my dark tortoiseshell sunglasses onto the top of my head. I didn't want him to have any trouble recognizing my eyes. Nathan began walking down the aisle, moving with that arrogant, effortless grace he always carried into boardrooms and dinner parties. He was looking at the seat numbers illuminated above the overhead bins. Row 10, row 11, row 12. As he approached row 13, his gaze dropped to eye level. He was preparing the charming, boyish smile he planned to give his sleeping mistress. Then, his eyes met mine. If you have never seen a human soul leave a body, it is a fascinating, horrifying spectacle. Nathan stopped dead in his tracks. His forward momentum completely vanished, as if he had walked face first into an invisible brick wall. The charming smile literally slid off his face, replaced by a slack-jawed mask of pure, unadulterated terror. All the blood drained from his cheeks, leaving him a sickly, ashen gray under the dim blue cabin lights. For a solid 10 seconds, neither of us breathed. We just stared at each other across 5 feet of carpeted aisle. Hello, Nathan, I whispered. My voice was no louder than the rustle of a magazine, but in the quiet cabin, it struck him like a physical blow. He blinked rapidly, shaking his head a fraction of an inch, as if trying to clear a hallucination. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He looked from me, to the sleeping woman beside me, and back to me. The geometry of the nightmare he had just walked into finally clicked in his brain. Olisha? He breathed, his voice cracking violently. What are you doing here? Taking your advice, I replied smoothly, leaning back in my seat and crossing my arms. You told me to use these 10 days to evaluate our marriage. I decided to get a head start. Turns out, the view is much clearer from 30,000 feet. He lunged forward, grabbing the headrest of the empty aisle seat across from me, his knuckles turning white. He leaned down, bringing his face inches from mine, his cologne mixing with the smell of recycled airplane air and stale panic. Have you lost your absolute mind? He hissed, his eyes darting frantically toward Sienna, terrified she would wake up. You followed me? You stalked me onto an international flight? You really are insane, even now. Even caught red-handed, hovering over his mistress, his first instinct was to call me crazy. The audacity was almost breathtaking. Keep your voice down, darling, I smiled, a cold, razor-sharp expression that made him flinch. You wouldn't want to wake Sienna. She needs her rest for Paris. The poor thing thinks she's dating an executive who treats her well, not a married coward who buys her jewelry on a joint account. Nathan's eyes bulged. You talked to her? Oh, we had a lovely chat, I whispered, leaning in closer, invading his space just as he had invaded my sanity for months. She told me all about your dead marriage. She told me about your clinically paranoid wife. She even showed me the gorgeous rose gold pendant you gave her in the lounge. You know, the one you swore was a retirement gift for Margaret in accounting. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. The corporate titan, the master manipulator, was completely malfunctioning. He was trapped in a metal tube over the ocean with his wife and his mistress, with absolutely nowhere to run. Olisha, please, he begged, his voice dropping to a desperate, pathetic whimper. Let's go to the galley. Let's talk about this in private. Please. No, I said simply. I am perfectly comfortable right here. You are going to ruin my life, he choked out. Your life? I scoffed quietly. You spent the last 6 months convincing me I was losing my grip on reality. You watched me cry, you watched me doubt my own mind, and you mocked me for it. You didn't just break your vows, Nathan. You tried to break me. Before he could respond, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, slightly too loud. Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing some rough air. Flight attendants, please take your seats. Nathan looked up, panic seizing his features as a flight attendant hurried down the aisle. Sir, you need to return to your seat immediately, she instructed sharply. He looked at me, a silent, desperate plea in his eyes. Go back to first class, Nathan, I whispered, my voice dripping with absolute contempt. Enjoy the complimentary champagne, because when this plane lands, the turbulence is really going to begin. He stood frozen for another second, before turning on his heel and fleeing back through the velvet curtain like a frightened child. The descent into London Heathrow was accompanied by the soft pink light of a European dawn bleeding through the cabin windows. Beside me, Sienna stirred, stretching her arms and pulling off her eye mask. She blinked away the sleep, looking fresh and impossibly radiant. Good morning, she yawned, offering me a warm smile. Did you manage to sleep at all, Claire? Not a wink, I replied, my voice steady and calm. I had a lot of thinking to do. Oh, I'm sorry, she said sympathetically. She checked her phone, which was still in airplane mode. I wonder if Nathan came back here while I was asleep. He promised he would. He did, I said. Sienna paused, her brow furrowing in confusion. He did? Did he wake me? No. I turned my body slightly to face her. He didn't want to wake you. He actually came back to speak with me. Sienna laughed nervously, tucking a piece of dark hair behind her ear. Speak to you? Why would he speak to you? You don't know him. Actually, Sienna, I do, I said, letting the alias drop. The plane's landing gear engaged with a heavy, mechanical clunk beneath our feet. My name isn't Claire. It's Olisha. Olisha Crawford. The confusion on her face lingered for a few seconds, before the realization slowly, agonizingly dawned. She stared at me, her large brown eyes widening until they were practically entirely white. Her mouth opened, but no sound emerged. She looked at my clothes, my face, desperately searching for the hysterical, unhinged monster Nathan had described. All she found was a perfectly composed woman in a vintage trench coat. "No," she breathed, shrinking back against the window. "No, you're the clinically paranoid wife?" I finished for her. "Yes, the one who supposedly suffocates him, the one he is supposedly divorcing as soon as you two get back from Paris." I didn't know," Sienna stammered, tears instantly springing to her eyes. "Olisha, I swear to God, he told me it was over. He told me you were separated in everything but name. He told me you were refusing to sign the papers." Looking at her, trembling and horrified, the anger I expected to feel toward her simply vanished. She wasn't the enemy. She was just another victim of his relentless manipulation. Another woman being fed a diet of beautiful, intoxicating lies. "I know," I said softly, reaching out and gently touching her arm. She flinched, but I didn't pull away. "He lied to you, Sienna, just like he lied to me. He isn't leaving me." He was packing his suitcase for this trip while I was standing in our bedroom. He yelled at me for finding the receipt for your necklace, telling me I was insane. Tears spilled over Sienna's eyelashes, ruining her perfect mascara. She reached up and grasped the rose gold pendant through her camisole, looking at it as if it had suddenly turned into a live wasp. What are we going to do?" she whispered, her voice breaking. The plane touched down on the British tarmac, the thrust reversers roaring loudly as we decelerated. "I am going to get off this plane, book a flight back to Seattle, and pack my things," I said. "And you, Sienna, are going to have a very interesting conversation with him at baggage claim." I pulled my phone out of my pocket and disabled airplane mode. A flood of text messages immediately populated my screen. "Nathan, 2:45 a.m. Olisha, please, don't do anything rash. Nathan, 3:10 a.m. We can fix this. I love you. Nathan, 4:30 a. Are you telling her? Please don't tell her. Nathan, 5 a.m. I'll cancel Paris. We can fly home together. Please answer me." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my banking app. While Nathan had been asleep in first class, assuming he had dodged a bullet until landing, I had paid $29.99 for the in-flight Wi-Fi. I had logged into all of our joint checking and savings accounts. As the primary account holder, I had initiated wire transfers of my half of all liquid assets to a private account I had opened a month ago when my suspicions first began. Then, I had reported the joint platinum credit card, the one he was currently carrying in his wallet to fund this extravagant European getaway, as stolen, effectively freezing it. "He's going to be waiting for you outside the jet bridge," I told Sienna, gathering my purse as the seatbelt sign chimed off. The cabin erupted into the usual chaotic scramble of passengers grabbing luggage. "He is going to lie to you. He is going to tell you I'm crazy, that I ambushed him, that he was just about to end it with me." Sienna wiped her eyes, a sudden, fierce anger hardening her delicate features. She unclasped the rose gold necklace, pulled it off her neck, and held it tightly in her fist. "He isn't going to get the chance," she said coldly. We walked off the plane together. As we entered the brightly lit terminal of Heathrow, there he was. Nathan was standing near the arrivals board, looking like a man marching to the electric chair. His eyes darted frantically until he saw us walking side by side. He took a step forward, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Olisha, Sienna, please, let me explain." I didn't stop walking. I didn't even look at him. I just kept my eyes fixed on the British Airways transfer desk in the distance. Sienna, however, stopped right in front of him. I paused a few feet away, turning back just in time to watch the flawless execution. "Sienna, baby, listen to me," Nathan pleaded, reaching for her arm. "Don't touch me," she snapped, her voice echoing loudly in the crowded terminal. Several passengers turned to watch. She took his hand, slapped the heavy 18K rose gold pendant into his palm, and closed his fingers over it. "Give this to Margaret in accounting. She deserves it." With that, Sienna turned on her heel and walked toward the exit, her head held high. Nathan stood there, utterly destroyed, clutching the necklace. He looked at me, his eyes begging for a lifeline that no longer existed. Your credit cards are frozen, Nathan, I said, a serene smile spreading across my face. Enjoy, Paris. I turned away from the wreckage of my marriage and walked toward the ticketing counter to buy a one-way ticket home. For the first time in 6 months, I wasn't paranoid. I was finally, gloriously free. Did Olisha make the right call by confronting them on the plane, or should she have waited until they were back in Seattle? How would you have handled a gaslighting partner caught red-handed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of ultimate revenge and want more real-life drama, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more wild storytelling.